Hey guys, Kevin here back with another RTA draft live video. Today we're going to be running through three drafts I think you should be playing for the upcoming season and in just under 2 weeks. These are going to be three of the strongest drafts in the current meta right now, and I think they're going to be make it so easy for you on your climb. So this first example is going to be the Frieren draft, which is basically Bellion plus Arceti pre-ban into Frieren first pick. And you can see my opponent's side is it's pretty generic rebans where it's just two broken units, Boss Aruka plus Lady of the Scales. And when you first pick free run like this, I would say I was gonna say 9 games out of 10. 10 games out of 10, you're gonna fight Maid Chloe. Ilanov, these two are like the bread and butter of the meta right now. These light units are just completely dominating, so you're gonna run into this response a lot of the time. And I think best case response here is I think you should take away the fight either, because not only is she strong into Makeover and Ilanov because she can lock them down for one turn, I think it's also like a double bonus because it's serving as a denial from your opponent as well, because I think Ida is one of the best answers into Frieren right now. And she blocks a lot of Frieren's more generic counters, like these like extra damage type units is basically the way you kill Frieren, and I think Ida does a lot to counteract those. And you want to pair that with an opener. I think the best combo right now is the Conqueror Lilius, because I think she's one of the most versatile openers, and she's quite unique in the fact that she can be the bridge herself. So you don't have to pick units specifically to like bridge themselves with her. She can be the bridge herself. You can go for something like an Aiden where she's pushing up, and then you get the vigor bonus from Aiden as well. So she brings some more to the table than a lot of other openers. And I think she's so versatile because she can play the aggressive game, she can play the first turn game, she can play the longer game as well because of how well designed her kit is. And I think you could also go for something like a Numa Luna. It's basically just either plus an opener that works well. So you want to be able to adapt there. And I think this is where we see what makes this draft so good, because usually in the draft for a lot of more aggro style drafts or aggro driven drafts, you'll see that you can do a lot to deter them from going for aggro, and then they can get stuck on the 4-5 where they don't have a good pivot. But this draft has an infinite amount of pivots. I think you could play almost anything on 4-5. So just to run through some of the examples, let's say they go for something like a Renak plus another opener like the new Luna we mentioned previously. Let's say they go for that. I could easily just, if you're confident in your speed, if you're a very fast player, you could go for Green Sid plus Green Vildred. Take the first turn, and you're winning that game 100% if you take the first turn. Looking at another example, let's say they go for a more RNG, more like turn two style, where they go for something like a Setsuko on 3 plus it could be anything. It could be a knight like FCC, it could be Genesis Ross. It doesn't really matter, because I think you're still winning in the draft, because this is where another pivot I could just do is I could go for something like a Ruel plus the Lionheart Hermia. Looking at another example, let's say they go for something like a Zeo draft where they look to completely cut off your first turn. So they go for something like a Zeo plus the Afternoon Soak Flan, for example. I could do a similar pivot where I could just go for something like the Ruel plus Solitaria. There's so much you could do in this draft, which is what makes it so strong, because there's no real way for your opponent to leave you with like where you're scratching your head on 4-5, like I have nothing I can do here. And I think this is why I would highly recommend playing this draft if you have like a good amount of speed gear. You don't have to have crazy speed gear to play this. I think you can play this even if you're not the fastest player in the world, because you have pivots you can do if they look to take away the first turn from you, where they go for something like a Zeo or a Renak. So this is going to be the first draft where it's the Frieren kind of cleave into pivot style draft, and I would highly recommend this one for a lot of players out there. So let's go into the second draft. So the second draft I'm going to run through is going to be based around Renak. I think Renak she has fallen off a little bit compared to her previous strength, but I think she's still a very strong unit in the meta right now, because I think she still brings a lot, like Pilfer, the way she can stack stats is still so crazy, and I still think she's a great unit right now. So you should definitely be looking to play her. So you can see in this example, Harsetti plus Frieren pre-bans on my side, because I think if I'm not planning on playing Frieren, I don't want them to be playing Maid Chloe plus Frieren. I think that's one of the most frustrating combos I've ever dealt with playing Epic 7, and I would not want to fight it. almost ever. So you can see here, first pick Renak on my side, Maid Chloe plus Ilinov, the classic on my opponent's side, and then the kind of whole idea of this draft is you pick Renak, they're almost always going to go Maid Chloe, and then you want to punish them for picking Maid Chloe so freely, where you go for something like Afternoon Soak Flan works great here. I think Bystander Huayong also works great here. I think you could do either one. And then you want to pair that with the Briarwitch Viseria on 3. So Briarwitch, the thing that's so good about her is because you can, if you're not as fast, you can run Guiding Light Briar. It still works fine. If you're a fast player, you run the Renewed Will. And I think the reason her matchup into Maid Chloe is so good because not only is she bringing the revive block with her skill 2, she also brings kill potential with her skill 3 because even if, for example, like if I brought an anti-revive unit, but I'm never able to kill my opponent, like if I pick something like you could say Sinful Angelica does the same thing here, but she does not bring as much kill potential as something like a Briar, which is what makes Briar so strong right now, I would say. And more often than not, you'll see they'll look to basically counteract the Briar Witch. They'll look to pick like anti-debuff units like a Dilibet and then something like a Fire Eater as well because she can play very well because obviously Briar Witch, if she skill 3s, reveals the Eater, Eater wipes your whole team with fixed damage. So you could run to a response like this, and I think you commonly will run to a response like this. And the way you counteract this is you want to basically punish them for going so heavy into this debuff kind of damage resistant style where you pick something like the Bystander Huayong, which I think is very strong, and you pair that with basically looking for a force band DPS. I think force band DPS or like a debuffer like a New Moon Luna would be amazing here, and I think that would almost always get the ban from your opponent. And I think you have every advantage of winning if you draft like this because you push back the Eater, or not the Eater, the Lilibet. You can kill her so easily with your comp, and I think what makes this draft so strong is because the name of the game right now in the meta is basically pivoting well because early picks are so general. They're so like every strong draft uses very similar early picks. So you need to be able to master the 4-5 where you always know like in this scenario I'll pick this on 4-5. In this scenario I'll pick this on 4-5. So this draft again is one where if my opponent, for example, went for uh they they went for like a turn 2 style where they pick something like I don't know FCC, they pick stuff like Genesis Ross. You want to be able to go more aggressive on that. So you would pick like more aggressive picks here, of course. You would pick something like the uh Bystander Hall would still be good. You could pick like AoE units like a Sylvan Sage Vivian to take advantage of the defense break. So it's very dependent on what your opponent picks. And I think the name of the game with these drafts is getting the reps in, getting like the matchup knowledge. And I think that's what makes this draft strong as well. So let's go into the third and final draft of the video. So the third and final draft I'm going to run through here is going to be centered around Maid Chloe, who, in my personal opinion, I think is the most influential unit this season in terms of how she completely changed the meta. Where now, like, sustained stalling is the name of the game, even more than something like a Frieren, in my opinion, which is, I think, is free to debate. I think Maid Chloe is, I would say, the one of the strongest units right now. And I think being able to play with and against her is going to be key to any climb you're looking to do this season. So you can see here, prebans have changed on my side where it's Renak plus Lady of the Scales, two of the OP units right now. And my opponent, generic prebans again. So there are multiple kind of responses to Maid Chloe first pick. And I think the first one and one of the more popular ones is where they go for the Tenebria plus either Ruel or Empyrean Ilinov. But I think both of them are strong. But the whole idea of this is that Maid Chloe's thing is if she presses F3, your team becomes way too tanky to kill. And Tenebria stops that because she's very, very high effectiveness. She can disrupt mage cooldown. She can make these tankier units do damage as well because of her rupture. So like she doesn't necessarily have to do like a high damage draft for her to be able to deal with Maid Chloe. So in this scenario, let's say they do that. I think pretty easy response in this case is where you just go for Afternoon Soak Plan for something like Harsetti, because Harsetti denies the opportunity for Tenebria to take more advantage of her like high tempo style where it's S3 into S2 into S1 dual attacks, because everyone, of course, their speed is fixed in Harsetti matches. So this response fairly straightforward. I think another opening we can run through is where they, let's say, for example, Tenebria was banned on my side, for example, because I think you can, it's perfectly fine to ban Tenebria instead of Renak, for example, here. So, you, nobody wants to fight Ruel plus Maid. I think this is like number one thing in RTA, don't fight Ruel Maid because neither of you is going to have fun. And there's a pretty funny saying right now where the one who is like stalling, roping is the one who lost. So you can both play stall, but if you lose, you're the one who's wasting the opponent's time. So nobody wants to fight Ruel Maid. So the way you respond to this is, I think, if they've picked two light units like this, I think Bystander Hua becomes very strong. I think she's very good at playing in these kind of games. I do. It is a like there's a bit of anti synergy you can say because Maid Chloe is all about buffs and Bystander Hua can't get any buffs. But I think that's you can play around that, and I think you would again probably want to pick something like Alhaseti to block that tempo style. I think you could also do the same response we just did for the Tenebria, where you go for something like a Afternoon Six Flan, because the way you beat Ruel is either you pick the extinction like something from something like a Hua, or you pick consistent damage, because Ruel's whole thing that makes her annoying is that you have to one shot her, you have to burst her down, or she's gonna stabilize, she's gonna revive, and now with her EE where it casts the X3 on herself as well, that makes it even better for her because if you don't kill her first and you kill someone else, or you kill someone else and you chunk her, when she has threes, the unit you killed is coming back at full HP and she's probably healing to full HP. So like I think you wanna pick consistent damage or you wanna pick extinction. Let's look at another opening you might fight, where if you first pick Maid Chloe, you could fight something like a. I think a lot of people right now are doing the what's her name? The Spirit Isoline drafts, where they go for Spirit Isoline plus a night early. So let's say they did Ilinov. I think you could also run into people who do FCC instead. The way you deal with this, I think, is kind of no. I'm noticing a trend here where you pick Fire Eater plus an opener, similar to previously. So I'm not going to run through 4 or 5 picks for this Maid draft because I think Maid drafts are all about the early picks. Like if you mess up early on a Maid draft, you're almost instantly dead because she's so the counters to her are so specific where you need to be confident in the way you draft, and then you need to be confident in playing against her as well if you're not picking her. So main drafts are almost always going to be about the early picks. And just to run through one final example here, let's say I'm going to change up the pre-bans actually for this one. Let's say you're pre-banning, because I think another fair pre-ban you could do is where you look to just ban out Frieren, because Frieren is what, like, Frieren can cause a lot of trouble for Maid Chloe draft. So let's say your opponent, they completely abandon this kind of slow style and they go for something more aggressive, where they do something like Bystander Hua plus like a Lone Wolf Para, for example. I think the way you deal with this is you're looking to outlast them in this scenario. So a knight like FCC would be more advisable than Empyrean Ilinov, because you don't want to pick more light units to give the Hua more value. And then I think going for a more like, you could go for a more RNG route where you look to pick Setsuka, but if you do that, you need to be prepared to fight something like a Briar Witch Seria on 3, so you need to be prepared for that. I think you could also look to do a different kind of draft where you go for the Spirit Eye Celine yourself, plus something like an FCC, because I think Celine is one of the best units at playing against Bystander, because you have obviously she's not able to get one shot by even something like a Tooth Period, because you've picked 2 units who can reduce um the additional damage from that, so they won't be able to one shot Celine, and then Bystander Hua herself can almost never kill Celine unless she has help from something like a Pyrrha. So I think Maid Chloe drafts, you just need to be able to know if my opponent, depending on what kind of response they go, if they go for an aggressive style draft, do you tank down? If they go for a tank down style draft, do you go for more consistent damage from something like a Flan? If they go for a debuff draft, do you go for the Bystander Hua, the Genesis Ross yourself? So just memorize those scenarios. It's all about getting the reps in, all about getting all the games. You need to. I think this draft is very game knowledge or unit knowledge centric. So I hope you guys have enjoyed. This was just me going through what I think are three of the strongest drafts right now. I think three drafts that once you learn them make your climb way easier, and I think they are more because obviously we have the warfare rules right now where the game could completely change depending on the frenzy, and I think these drafts are more. The core of these drafts are very consistent across the frenzies. The only one being the penetration resistance frenzy, where the DPS you pick in some of the spots I mentioned might be different. But I think these drafts are the core of them is the same across all the frenzies. So I hope you guys have enjoyed. I hope to come up with more videos next season, and I'm wishing everyone good luck in their climb. And I hope you all get the ranks you want. See you next time.